Mail-order bride rejected for being too fat until another man showed her true love. Lyra stared out of the small viewport of the shuttle as the sprawling city of Epsilon 9 came into view. The colony hung in the middle of a pale blue gas giant's orbit, a cluster of silver towers connected by thin, glimmering bridges. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. This was it, the new life she had dreamed of. She had left Earth behind months ago, leaving behind a small apartment, dusty books, and a quiet life that often felt too small. The interstellar matchmaking agency had promised a fresh start, a chance to be someone else's partner in a colony far away. Lyra was ready for it. Yet as the shuttle hummed toward the landing platform, a small knot of doubt formed in her stomach. She adjusted her bag, heavy with tools, notebooks, and a few personal items she refused to leave behind. "Don't let anyone define your worth," she whispered to herself. It had been the mantra she clung to since her last heartbreak, the one where she had been told she was too much to love. The shuttle landed with a soft thud, and the doors opened to the bustling hub of Epsilon Portuguese 9 station. The air smelled faintly of ozone and machinery, mixed with the sweet aroma of alien fruits from nearby markets. People moved with purpose, some human, some not, each blending into the rhythmic hum of the colony. Lyra stepped out and drew in a deep breath. A man approached, clipboard in hand, his uniform crisp and sharp. "Lyra Marin?" he asked, voice polite but firm. "Welcome to Epsilon 9, he said. "Your match is waiting for you at the docking bay." Ka, Commander Kale. Lyra's heart skipped. She had read Kale's profile 100 times. The tall, silver-eyed man with military experience, known for his leadership and tactical skill. He seemed impressive, capable. Everything she thought she wanted. She followed the man, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her chest. The docking bay was enormous, filled with sleek ships and hovering transport pods. And there he was. Commander Kale stood near a silver spacecraft, his posture straight, eyes scanning the area with sharp precision. His gaze landed on her, and Lyra's heart sank before she could even say hello. Kale's eyes flicked over her in a way that made her stomach twist. He looked at her, really looked, and then, without a word, shook his head. I'm sorry," he said finally, his tone formal. You don't meet my expectations." Lyra blinked. Her throat went dry. "Expectations?" she managed to say. "What do you mean?" Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're larger than I anticipated. I cannot proceed with this arrangement." The words hit Lyra like a shockwave. She had prepared for nerves, for awkward introductions, maybe even rejection. But never like this. Not for her body, not for something so shallow. Her cheeks burned. Humiliation clawed at her chest, but she squared her shoulders. "I see," she said, voice trembling slightly. She took a deep breath, forcing calm into her words. "Thank you for your honesty." Kale nodded, not unkindly, then turned and walked away. Lyra watched him go, a bitter mix of anger and sadness swirling inside her. She felt small, out of place, and unwanted. But beneath it, a spark of determination flickered. She turned away from the docking bay, her bag heavier than before, not with weight, but with disappointment. Her shuttle's pilot, an older woman with a soft smile, noticed. "You okay, kid?" she asked, leaning against the console. Lyra forced a nod. "I will be." "I just wasn't expecting that." Some people see only what they want, the pilot said gently. Epsilon 9 has a lot to offer. Don't let one person make you forget that. Lyra smiled faintly. The pilot's words reminded her that she was here for more than a romantic match. She was here for herself, to grow, to explore, to use her skills in a place that might actually value them. The station's automated taxi system carried her toward the residential district. She passed people from all walks of life, engineers, traders, scientists, and adventurers of every type. Some greeted her with polite nods. Others were too busy with their own tasks to notice. Lyra felt a strange comfort in the anonymity, in the possibility that she could become whoever she wanted without judgment. Her assigned apartment was modest, a small unit with a view of the gas giant below. Lyra unpacked slowly, each item placed carefully in drawers and on shelves. Her tools went first, the wrenches, the coding tablet, the soldering kit. She lined up her notebooks, her personal logs, and even a small plant she had managed to keep alive during the long journey. Once her space felt somewhat like home, Lyra leaned back and let herself breathe. For the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to feel the mix of fear and excitement without guilt. The next morning, she reported to the terraformation hub, a massive facility at the edge of the colony. Her skills as an engineer were immediately put to use, and she was introduced to the team. Humans, aliens, and hybrids, all working together on the massive project to expand habitable zones on the colony. Lyra's fingers itched to work. The machines were complex but forgiving, the programming languages familiar yet flexible, and the environment allowed her creativity to flourish. She suggested modifications to airflow regulators, redesigned a small drone for surface mapping, and even improvised a repair on a critical control panel, using nothing but duct tape and her ingenuity. The team began to notice her, not as a romantic match or someone to judge, but as a capable engineer with ideas that worked. One colleague, a quiet exobiologist named Orion, often lingered nearby, watching her with an analytical gaze that made Lyra feel seen in a different way. He didn't judge, he observed, and when she succeeded, he gave the smallest nod of approval. The week passed in a blur of work and adjustment. Lyra discovered a rhythm to life on Epsilon. 9 long hours in the hub, short walks along bridges that hovered over glowing blue gas clouds, meals from alien vendors that delighted her taste buds, and quiet nights alone in her apartment where she could think, write, and dream. Then came the first major test. An unexpected storm swept through the outer reaches of the colony, a plasma surge that threatened the new terraforming units. The team scrambled, trying to secure equipment and protect the habitat zones. Lyra didn't hesitate. She sprinted to the nearest control module, assessed the damage, and devised a quick fix using spare parts and emergency protocols. Her hands moved quickly, her mind calculating and adjusting, and within minutes, the immediate threat was minimized. The hub's automated systems stabilized. Her colleagues looked at her with a mixture of awe and relief. Orion's quiet nod said more than words ever could. Lyra stood back, breathing heavily, heart racing, not from fear, but from triumph. She had arrived rejected, humiliated, and uncertain. But here she had proven that her worth wasn't defined by someone else's superficial standards. She could contribute, she could create, and she could shine. As she looked out at the gas giant from the hub's observation deck, Lyra smiled to herself. The universe was vast, and she was just beginning to find her place in it. Somewhere among the stars, new adventures awaited, and perhaps new connections built on respect, admiration, and shared purpose. The rejection by Kale no longer felt like a failure. It was a detour, a small bump on a much larger journey. And Lyra, standing amidst the humming machines and blinking lights of the terraformation hub, knew one thing for certain. She was ready for whatever came next. The colony didn't yet know it, that they had just met one of the most brilliant engineers in human history. And Lyra wasn't done proving her worth. Not to anyone. The next morning, Lyra woke to the soft hum of the colony. The sunlight reflecting off the gas giant's swirling clouds bathed her apartment in a pale blue glow. She sat on the edge of her bed, stretching and letting the new day sink in. Yesterday's storm had tested her skills, and she had succeeded. But she knew this was only the beginning.
Epsilon 9 was a place of challenges, and she was determined to rise above them all.
Her breakfast was a simple mix of Earth-style oats and the colony's sweet, orange-hued fruit called zilberries. She ate quickly, glancing at her tablet, which showed the day's assignments in the terraformation hub. The morning briefing had been rescheduled due to the storm, and Lyra wanted to arrive early to review the system logs. As she walked through the hub's vast corridors, she passed several teams of engineers, scientists, and maintenance drones. Most of the people here had been working together for years, yet she felt no intimidation. Her rejection had fueled her determination. If Kale could judge someone based on appearance, she would prove that real worth was measured by skill, creativity, and courage. She reached the main control room and was greeted by Captain Arlen, the project supervisor. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a steady presence, the kind of person who commanded respect without raising his voice. "Lyra," he said, scanning the report she had submitted overnight. "Good work yesterday. You managed to stabilize the surge before it caused major damage." Lyra smiled, pride warming her chest.
"Thank you, Captain. It was
intense." Arlen nodded. "Your approach was unorthodox, but effective. I want you to lead a small team for the next calibration cycle." Her heart leapt. This was her chance to shine. She nodded quickly. "I'll get started immediately." Lyra moved to the preparation area, gathering tools and checking the system schematics. The team she would lead was a mix of humans and alien technicians, all skilled in their own ways. Some eyed her warily. Newcomers often faced skepticism, but Lyra didn't let it bother her. Among the team was Orion, the exobiologist who had watched her quietly during the storm. He had a calm presence that put people at ease, and his analytical mind complemented her engineering skills perfectly. Lyra approached him as she unpacked her tools. "Good morning," she said. Orion glanced up from his console, his silver eyes thoughtful. "Good morning. Ready for another day of chaos?" Lyra laughed softly. "I hope it's less chaotic than yesterday," he smirked. No promises. The team gathered around a large terraforming unit. Its structure was complex, with twisting conduits, sensors, and delicate alien machinery integrated with human tech. Their task was to calibrate the system to withstand minor plasma fluctuations. Routine work, but critical for the colony's expansion. Lyra began by assigning roles, carefully considering each member's strengths. She guided them through the process step by step, explaining her reasoning and asking for input. When a conduit refused to align, Lyra experimented with a small adjustment, watching the data feed in real time. "Try reversing the polarity slightly," she suggested to one technician. The machine whirred, then stabilized. Cheers broke out among the team. Orion stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. "Your approach is unusual but effective," he said quietly. "Most engineers would have followed the manual. You think differently." Lyra felt a small thrill. "Sometimes manuals aren't enough," she said. "You have to trust your instincts." For the next several hours, the team worked under Lyra's guidance. Each minor challenge became an opportunity for her to demonstrate skill and leadership. Her confidence grew with every success, and even the skeptical technicians began to admire her. During a break, Orion approached her again. "You handled that calibration exceptionally," he said. "I've seen many engineers in my career, but few approach problems the way you do." Lyra felt warmth rise to her cheeks. Compliments from Orion were different. They weren't about appearance or charm. They were about intellect, creativity, and courage. "Thank you," she said softly.
That means a lot.
He nodded and returned to his station, leaving Lyra smiling to herself. For the first time, she felt that maybe this colony could be a place where she belonged. The afternoon brought a new challenge. A data anomaly appeared in the terraforming unit's monitoring system. Readings indicated a slight energy spike that could escalate if unchecked. Lyra and her team rushed to assess the issue. "Orion, can you run a biological scan of the soil matrix?" she asked. "Already in progress. I'll alert you if anything unusual appears." Lyra's mind worked quickly. The anomaly seemed linked to a malfunctioning conduit near the outer edge of the unit. She adjusted the flow, but the readings only worsened. "This needs a new approach," she muttered. She thought for a moment, then grabbed spare conduits and rewired part of the system, creating a temporary bypass. The energy spike stabilized. The team looked at her in awe. Captain Arlen, who had been observing from the control room, spoke over the comms. "Excellent work, Lyra. That was innovative and precise. You've likely prevented a major failure." Lyra exhaled, her hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. She had faced doubt, fear, and rejection, yet she had succeeded. This was the moment she realized her worth didn't depend on someone else's opinion. She was capable, intelligent, and resilient. As the sun set over the gas giant, Lyra walked to the observation deck with Orion. The sky was a swirl of blues and purples, dotted with the faint glow of distant stars. Orion remained quiet, but his presence was comforting. "You handled today well," he said finally. "Not everyone can stay calm under pressure, but you."
"You thrive in it," Lyra smiled, a mix of pride and gratitude.
"It helps when you love what you do," she said.
Orion tilted his head. "I think it helps when you believe in yourself too," Lyra laughed softly. "I'm learning." The following days were filled with challenges, each designed to test the limits of the terraforming systems. Lyra faced equipment malfunctions, data inconsistencies, and unexpected energy fluctuations. Each time she found solutions, sometimes unconventional, sometimes risky, but always effective. Her reputation grew within the colony, and whispers of admiration followed her through the corridors. Even Kale's brief appearance in the hub couldn't shake her resolve. He had come to check on the terraforming project and had cast one glance at her before moving on. But Lyra no longer felt the sting of rejection. She had more important things to focus on: innovation, teamwork, and growth. One evening, as she reviewed the day's data, Orion joined her at the console.
"You've made a remarkable difference here," he said, "not just in results, but in spirit. People are beginning to respect the team because of your leadership."
Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You really think so?" "I do," Orion said, meeting her gaze. "You have a rare combination of talent, courage, and empathy. That's what makes you extraordinary." Orion's words were unlike Kale's. They carried genuine respect, not superficial judgment. Lyra felt a connection forming, built on shared challenges and mutual admiration rather than appearances. The next week brought an even greater test. The colony planned a full system trial for the terraforming units. a large-scale simulation of environmental fluctuations that could occur in the outer habitats. If the systems failed, it could delay the expansion of the colony by months. Lyra was put in charge of the calibration team, with Orion assisting her on the biological and environmental aspects. As the trial began, alarms blared and screens flickered with data. Lyra's team moved swiftly, following her guidance. When one unit began to overheat, she quickly adjusted the conduits. Orion monitored the biological readings, calling out changes as they happened. Together they synchronized human ingenuity with scientific precision. Hours passed in tense coordination. Finally, the system stabilized. The trial was a success. Lyra's team cheered, and Captain Arlen congratulated her personally. "You've proven yourself, Lyra," he said. "Your approach is innovative and effective. This colony is lucky to have you." Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never known. She had arrived as a stranger, rejected and uncertain. Now she was a valued member of the colony, respected for her skills, intelligence, and courage. As she left the hub that night, Orion walked beside her. "You've done more than anyone could have expected," he said softly. Lyra looked at him, a warm smile forming. "I guess sometimes rejection opens the door to something better." Orion nodded, his silver eyes thoughtful. "And sometimes it leads you to someone who truly sees you." Lyra's heart fluttered. She didn't need someone to validate her worth, but companionship built on respect and admiration felt right. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine the possibilities. The colony lights glimmered beneath them as they walked along the observation deck. Lyra knew challenges would continue, storms would come, and doubts would appear. But she also knew that she had the skill, courage, and determination to face whatever came her way. And somewhere, amidst the stars and swirling gas clouds, a new chapter of her life was beginning, one built on trust, growth, and the recognition that she was more than capable of shaping her own destiny. The morning light spilled through the translucent walls of the terraformation hub, casting pale streaks across the polished floors. Lyra entered, her steps steady but purposeful. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of tasks, trials, and minor crises, and she had grown into her role as a capable leader. Yet, today felt different. The hum of the hub carried a tension that prickled her senses. Captain Arlen met her near the entrance, brows furrowed. "Lyra, we have a situation," he said, voice low but urgent. "One of the outer habitat zones is reporting irregular energy spikes. It could affect the entire colony if not contained quickly." Lyra felt a familiar thrill of adrenaline. Challenges were never easy, but they were her element. "I'll gather a team and head out immediately," she said, already moving toward the equipment bays. Orion caught up to her, his expression serious. "We'll need both engineering and biological analysis. The readings suggest the spikes are interacting with the soil matrix. It's unusual."
Lyra nodded. "Then let's prepare for anything."
"We can't risk waiting." By the time they reached the transport pods, the team was assembled: engineers, technicians, and Orion's biologists. The habitat zone they were headed to orbited slightly farther from the main colony, a fragile ring of interconnected domes built to test life support systems in extreme environments. As the transport pod hovered above the zone, the view through the viewport was tense. Electrical arcs leapt between conduits, tiny sparks dancing across surfaces. Machines whined and clicked, and the faint hum of the terraforming units seemed unstable. Lyra's heart pounded, but not with fear. She was alive with purpose. "Remember," she instructed her team, "we're not just fixing machines. We're keeping the habitat stable." Think clearly, communicate constantly, and trust your instincts. Orion glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. Your instructions are as precise as your work. Lyra returned the smile with determination. Then let's do it! The team entered the habitat zone carefully. Lyra led them to the primary terraforming unit, which hummed with unstable energy. She scanned the consoles, noting the irregular patterns of the energy spikes. It wasn't just a mechanical failure. Something was interacting with the terraforming matrix in ways no one had seen before. This isn't standard, she muttered. It's almost like the habitat itself is responding. Orion crouched near a soil monitor.
I see it too, he said. The microorganisms in the matrix are reacting to the energy fluctuations.
If the spikes continue, it could destabilize the environment entirely. Lyra frowned. The problem was larger than any she had encountered. Not only was the colony at risk, but the very systems they had built to expand life were being challenged in ways that were unpredictable. She turned to her team. Split into pairs. One group stabilizes the conduits, the other monitors environmental readings. We'll coordinate every step. Hours passed in tense coordination. Lyra moved between the groups, guiding, troubleshooting, and improvising solutions. When a conduit began to overheat, she repurposed a secondary energy line to bypass it. When sensors misread the soil's response, Orion and Lyra recalibrated the system, balancing engineering precision with biological insight. At one point, a sudden surge knocked out part of the energy grid. Sparks flew, and alarms blared. A junior engineer froze. Lyra rushed over. "Focus," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Remember what we practiced. You can do this." With Lyra's guidance, the engineer rerouted the energy flow. The surge dissipated. Lyra exhaled, but there was no time to relax. The habitat's readings indicated the spikes were not fully resolved. "Orion, what do the biological patterns tell you?" she asked. He studied the data. "The microorganisms are adapting. It's almost as if they're learning from the energy patterns. If we push too hard, we could harm the ecosystem." Lyra nodded. "Then we'll need a delicate balance. Steady energy adjustments, incremental changes, and constant monitoring. Together, they worked tirelessly. Lyra's hands moved with practiced precision, rerouting conduits and recalibrating machines. Orion adjusted environmental parameters in tandem, interpreting subtle shifts in the soil and plant life. Slowly, the spikes diminished. The habitat systems hummed steadily, and the lights on the monitoring panels glowed green. Thus, exhausted but victorious, the team let out a collective sigh. Lyra leaned against a console, wiping sweat from her brow. "Good work," she said, her voice soft but proud. "We did it." Orion approached, his silver eyes bright. "We did it together. You led us brilliantly." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you." The two stood side by side, watching the habitat stabilize. Lyra realized how much she valued Orion's quiet presence, his patience, insight, and unwavering support. Unlike Kale, who judged her on appearances, Orion saw her true self, her skill, her courage, and her heart. The journey back to the colony was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Lyra and Orion shared small observations about the habitat, the adaptations of the soil microorganisms, and ideas for improving the terraforming units. A connection was forming, not just friendship, but mutual admiration and trust. Back at the hub, Captain Arlen awaited their report. "Excellent work," he said, reviewing the logs. "Your coordination and problem-solving prevented what could have been a disaster. Lyra, your leadership is remarkable." Lyra smiled. Thank you, Captain. The team did an incredible job. Arlen nodded. Indeed. And Orion, your observations were critical. You two make a formidable team. Lyra felt a quiet pride. She had arrived as an outsider, rejected and underestimated. Now she was a leader, a problem solver, and a respected member of the colony. That evening, Lyra returned to her apartment, exhausted but satisfied. She reviewed the day's events, logging every adjustment, observation, and anomaly. Her mind buzzed with ideas for improvement and new protocols to prevent future energy spikes. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Orion standing there, holding a small tray of food. "Thought you might need something to eat," he said, his voice gentle. Lyra's lips curved into a grateful smile. "You didn't have to. I insisted," he said with a small laugh. "Besides, you've earned it." They ate together, sharing stories of their past experiences, laughing quietly, and discussing ideas for future projects. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of true companionship, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared challenges. Over the next week, Lyra continued to refine the terraforming systems. The colony's leadership began to take notice, not just of her technical skills, but of her ability to lead, inspire, and innovate. Engineers and scientists alike sought her input, and Orion remained a steady presence at her side, his quiet admiration growing with each success. Then came another alert, this one more serious. A nearby asteroid belt had begun shifting unexpectedly, sending fragments toward the colony's outer sectors. While not immediately dangerous, the trajectory could intersect with the habitat zones if uncorrected. Lyra studied the data, calculating probabilities and potential outcomes. "We need a system to divert the fragments," she said, her mind already racing with solutions, "and will need to act fast." Orion joined her, analyzing the data from a biological and environmental perspective. "The diversion will need to be precise," he said. "Any miscalculation could destabilize the habitats we've worked so hard to protect."
Lyra nodded.
Then precision is exactly what we'll deliver. The team worked around the clock, constructing energy barriers and recalibrating the terraforming units to adjust gravitational fields subtly.
Lyra directed the operation with focus and clarity, anticipating problems before they arose and improvising solutions as needed. Orion monitored the ecosystems, ensuring that every adjustment was safe for both humans and alien flora alike. As the final asteroid fragment shifted safely away from the colony, Lyra allowed herself a moment of relief. She had faced yet another test and succeeded. The colony, once a place of uncertainty and rejection, had become a place of triumph and purpose. That night, standing on the observation deck with Orion, Lyra looked out at the stars and the glowing gas giant. "It's incredible," she said softly. "To think I almost let one person's judgment stop me from being here." Orion's gaze met hers. "Some people never see what really matters," he said. "But others, people like you, change everything by showing their true worth." Lyra smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the glow of the gas giant. She had found her place, her purpose, and perhaps the beginning of something more with Orion. The colony slept below, unaware of the quiet heroism that had kept it safe. Lyra felt a deep satisfaction in that. She had arrived rejected and uncertain, but she had proven her intelligence, courage, and determination. And in doing so, she had begun to build a life filled with respect, trust, and the promise of meaningful connection. Rising tides and challenges would come again. She knew that, But Lyra Marin had learned one fundamental truth. When humans combine ingenuity with courage, determination, and heart, no obstacle, no matter how great, was impossible to overcome. And somewhere in the hum of the terraformation hub, amidst the blinking lights and quiet machinery, Lyra and Orion began to dream of what they could achieve together. The morning sun reflected off the silver towers of Epsilon 9, illuminating the terraformation hub with a soft glow. Lyra walked through the corridors with a quiet confidence she had not known when she first arrived. The colony had begun to recognize her for what she truly was: a brilliant engineer, a problem solver, and a leader. Captain Arlen met her near the main control room. "Lyra," he said, a rare smile tugging at his lips, "the Council wants to meet with you. Your work on the habitat zones and the asteroid diversion has drawn significant attention." "They want to discuss your role in the future of the colony?" Lyra felt a rush of pride. She had expected small appreciation, maybe some nods of approval, but formal recognition from the colony's leadership. This was unprecedented. She nodded firmly. "I'll be there immediately." As she walked to the council chambers, Orion caught up with her. "I assume this is good news," he said, his silver eyes shining with quiet admiration. Lyra laughed softly. "If it's anything like I hope, yes, but we should be prepared for anything." The council chamber was vast, filled with representatives from various sectors of the colony. Humans and alien delegates alike observed her as she entered. Some smiled warmly, others regarded her with neutral curiosity. Lyra straightened her back and stepped forward with the confidence she had earned. "Lyra Marin," the council head began, "your work has not gone unnoticed. The ingenuity and courage you have shown in stabilizing habitat zones and averting potential disasters have set a new standard for this colony. We would like to formally offer you leadership of the Terraforming Expansion Project." A hush fell over the chamber. Lyra's heart raced. Leadership? Authority? Responsibility? She had dreamed of recognition, but the reality was overwhelming. She felt Orion's presence beside her, grounding her. I am honored," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I will dedicate myself to the success of the colony." Applause followed, echoing in the high ceilings of the chamber. Lyra allowed herself a small smile. She had arrived rejected and underestimated, and now she stood at the forefront of the colony's future. Over the next few days, Lyra settled into her new role. Her office overlooked the glowing gas giant, and she pored over expansion plans, equipment specifications, and staffing schedules. Orion continued to assist her, his insight into biological and environmental systems invaluable. Together, they became a formidable team, blending human ingenuity with scientific precision. One evening, while reviewing data in her office, Lyra received an unexpected visitor, Commander Kale. He had returned to the colony on official business, but his eyes immediately found hers. "Lyra," he said, voice calm but tinged with surprise, "I heard about your leadership role." I underestimated you." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. She remembered the sting of his rejection, the way he had judged her on appearances rather than skill. "Thank you for your honesty," she said, her tone neutral. "But my worth was never defined by your expectations." Kale's expression faltered, and he nodded. "I see that now." He turned and left without another word, leaving Lyra alone with a sense of closure. Orion, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, approached her. "Some people never change," he said softly. But you've moved past it. You've built something meaningful here. Lyra smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest.
Yes.
And it feels right. The following week brought new challenges. A neighboring colony reported unusual energy readings, suggesting that the terraforming units might be affected beyond Epsilon 9. The council requested immediate assessment, and Lyra volunteered to lead the mission. The journey to the outer sectors was tense. Lyra and Orion worked closely, analyzing data and coordinating their teams. The readings indicated that the energy fluctuations were caused by interactions between terraforming units and local asteroid fragments. The problem required both precise engineering adjustments and careful environmental management. Lyra directed the operation with authority and calm. Orion monitored the biological systems, making subtle adjustments to prevent harm to the local ecosystems. Together, they synchronized every action, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Hours passed in focused effort. Lyra's hands moved with practiced precision, rerouting energy flows and recalibrating units. Orion's eyes scanned readings, adjusting environmental parameters in real time. Slowly, the energy fluctuations stabilized. As the final system came online, Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. She had faced yet another major challenge and succeeded. The colony's leadership sent a message of praise, acknowledging her ingenuity and decisive action. That night, back on the observation deck, Lyra and Orion watched the stars twinkle above the gas giant. "You've become an inspiration here," Orion said quietly, "not just for your skill, but for your courage and leadership." Lyra smiled. "It's been a long journey, but I've learned that worth isn't measured by someone else's opinion. It's proven by action, resilience, and heart." Orion nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And sometimes it leads you to people who truly appreciate you." Lyra looked at him, feeling the quiet connection between them. Their partnership had grown beyond professional respect. It was built on mutual admiration, trust, and shared triumphs. She realized that the bond they were forming was something rare, something genuine and enduring. The next morning, Lyra's team gathered for a briefing. New terraforming units were scheduled for deployment, and she had prepared innovative strategies to enhance efficiency and safety. She assigned roles carefully, considering each member's strengths and weaknesses. "Remember," she said, addressing the team, "we are not just technicians. We are creators, builders, and guardians of life. Each adjustment we make ensures the colony thrives. Work together, communicate constantly, and trust in your skills." The team nodded, inspired by her words. Lyra felt a surge of pride. She had arrived as an outsider, uncertain and rejected, and now she led a team that respected and followed her. As the terraforming units powered up, Lyra and Orion worked in tandem, their actions synchronized with precision and intuition. A minor energy fluctuation appeared, but Lyra adjusted the system instantly. Orion recalibrated the environmental parameters. Within moments, stability returned. The team cheered, and Captain Arlen's voice echoed over the comms. "Excellent work, Lyra. Your leadership and ingenuity continue to impress. The colony is stronger because of you." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. She had proven her abilities, earned recognition, and gained a partner in Orion who valued her for her true self. Later that evening, as she recorded the day's events, Lyra reflected on her journey. Rejection had once defined her, but now she understood its true purpose. It had pushed her to discover her potential, to embrace challenges, and to find companionship built on respect rather than superficial judgment. Orion entered quietly, holding a cup of warm tea. "You've done more than anyone expected," he said, placing it beside her, "and you've inspired everyone around you." Lyra looked up, meeting his gaze. "We've done it together," she said. "I couldn't have managed it alone." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Then I'm glad we're a team." As the night deepened, Lyra felt a sense of peace and purpose she had never known. The colony slept, secure in the knowledge that one of its brightest minds was watching over it. Lyra had arrived rejected, uncertain, and overlooked. Now she was recognized, respected, and on the cusp of shaping the future of Epsilon 9. And in the quiet hum of the terraformation hub, she knew that the challenges ahead, though great, would be faced with ingenuity, courage, and the unwavering support of someone who truly saw her. The universe was vast, full of unknown dangers and opportunities. Lyra Marin had proven that humans, with determination, intelligence, and heart, could rise to meet any challenge. And beside her, Orion shared that journey, not as a shadow, but as an equal partner, ready to face whatever came next. As the gas giant glowed softly outside the observation deck, Lyra felt a quiet certainty. The story of her worth, her strength, and her capability was only beginning.